The Christmas telegram before you may be a humble piece of paper, but it would not have existed without the advances in communications technology with the invention and spread of the telegraph system. It had a massive impact on all areas of late 19th and early 20th century societies, heralding a new era of unprecedented connectivity across the globe. For Australia, the capabilities of the telegraph system allowed it to overcome its remoteness and bound it closer to the wider British Empire. In this video, I'll be discussing how the telegraph not only revolutionized the way people communicated, but also changed the face of journalism, business, and imperialism. We begin in Australia, where the first telegraph line was built to connect Melbourne with Williamstown in 1853. One of the earliest messages transmitted down the line was news of the Eureka Rebellion at the Ballarat gold mines. By the end of the 1860s, every state had its own lines connecting the major cities and towns. In 1872, the Overland Telegraph Line was opened, spanning 3,200 kilometers and linking Darwin to Adelaide using 36,000 poles. Charles Todd, the South Australian Superintendent of Telegraphs, spearheaded the effort and relied upon the route of Scottish explorer John McDowell Stuart, who had led the first successful expedition to traverse Australia from north to south through the centre. The arrival of the telegraph was a boost to the fledgling colony's economic prospects. While mail ships took 3 months to journey from England to Australia, the telegraph enabled messages to be transmitted in just 7 hours. Cities and towns with telegraph offices transformed into business centers where market transactions and banking services were swiftly carried out between far flung areas. The telegraph also enabled time to be standardized across the various colonies and allowed weather observations to be transmitted in a timely fashion. The overland telegraph line opened up the vast interior of Australia for settlement, with farmers and explorers basing themselves near telegraph stations along the route. By the 20th century, Australia had more than 24,000 miles of telegraph lines in operation, with an astounding 18 million telegrams sent annually. The Australian lines were only a small section of a massive network that linked the vast stretches of the British Empire. Over 1 million kilometers of telegraph lines linked London to 20,000 villages and towns throughout the empire. The global network, informally named the All Red Line, played a major role in increasing trade and the flow of information between distant colonies. Sanford Fleming, a Canadian engineer, described the network in 1901 as a means of binding closer together the scattered portions of the British Empire. The network also served as a conduit for news to be transmitted from offices in London to the Dominion Press, and the high costs led to the formation of wire agencies such as Reuters to spread the costs among several press companies. When the Great War arrived in 1914, the multiple redundancies built into the network ensured that British lines of communication remained unaffected throughout the war. Globally, the construction of submarine cables allowed faster communications between nations, making trade and information exchanges simpler and faster. By 1900, communication had become detached from geographical and navigational constraints. It is interesting that the telegraph bridged the geographical gap between nations, but also helped sharpen divides among imperial powers and their colonies. As nations realized the strategic importance of telegraph networks, the industry came under greater state control amid a rise in cable nationalism. News disseminated via the telegraph also helped spread revolutionary ideas and a sense of national consciousness in territories under colonial rule. It is evident to me that the Christmas telegram, while merely a piece of paper, is a product of a system that played a major role in globalizing the Industrial Revolution and colonial enterprise. It also symbolizes the shrinking of the tyranny of distance that allowed people to see themselves as part of a larger global community for the first time.